It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
That's right, everyone. You are back with 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest alongside padded practice enthusiast Nick Jacobs. Nick, we get to talk about actual contact football.
Yes, Matt, they were in full pads. Very exciting stuff, Matt. It was very, we don't have to say until the pads come on anymore. They were on. I was witness. You were witness. A lot of Chiefs fans were witness. So we all got to see it. And in fact, we are past Friday now. So I don't have to ask that question anymore. And, now it's just when the first preseason game rolls around.
Yep, and that's going to not be too long away. We over the weekend, you were there on Saturday when we met with the officials, and they got to have a little session with them. Was John Hussey's crew that's been coming in and working the last 3 days in St. Joe. They're going to be working the Hall of Fame game on Thursday night. But they've been calling the play, calling the flags, throwing everything, going over the new rules with the players and coaches the last couple of days. And they met with media on Saturday, and that was very, very informative. Learned a couple of things that I didn't know, especially one little trick about the kickoff rule. So it was a lot of good stuff. And actually, we got to see one of those elements today, Nick, because I had asked him about a play where Deon Bush batted the ball off the kick. As far as in the lineup zone, not in the landing zone, but outside the landing zone, is one of the blockers on the kick return. And I was just asking, what happens in a ball of that nature? Turns out, kick team gets it at the 40. So as long as your feet don't leave the ground. And it happened again today. There was a line drive kick that Harrison Butker kicked it, and Deon Bush once again. Deon Bush apparently has the longest arms in the world, Nick. I had no idea. He managed to get his hands on that one, did not leave the ground, batted the ball. So dead ball. Receiving team gets it at the 40. That's a nice little trick to have in your hand. But yeah, busy weekend, Nick. Chiefs did make one acquisition. They let go of linebacker Luque Washington and brought in an edge rusher and Owen Carney. Joe Thuney off of the PUP list. We will, in theory, see him doing something on Monday. He has cleared his physical, but it is a quick 10-10-10 practice, Nick. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see Joe do much more than maybe do stretch. And I mean, maybe there's a little bit of stuff that he will do, but I wouldn't expect that he would participate in any of the 11-on-11 drills on Monday.
Yeah, it's good to slowly ease him back in right now because one, Joe doesn't need all those reps. He's a veteran and a very experienced veteran, been in a lot of Super Bowls, knows what he's doing, and you want to get that pec back to full strength. You want to give him a certain amount of work, but you don't want to overwhelm it too early. And on top of it, Caliendo needs the reps more than Joe does. The only thing you're kind of wondering is how many reps do you feel like you need to give Joe with the left tackle so that they, Wanya got to play with him last year, but Kingsley hasn't had that opportunity yet to be able to work with him. So, that's just something that they've got to entertain. How much do they want to give rep-wise for Kingsley to work with Joe before potentially a regular season?
Exactly. I would probably be surprised that how late he's coming in if Thuney played in the first preseason game. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did bring him along fairly slowly, because if he's not going to start in that preseason game and play a drive or two with the starters, then you're going to want Caliendo, whomever it is, to get that work. So we'll see. If he does ease in slowly, not a surprise. So I'd be watching out for that. That leaves Jalen Watson, Charles Omenihu, Derrick Nottie still on the PUP list. Obviously, Omenihu is going to be probably October, November still. Derrick Nottie doesn't look terribly close. It does look like it's going to still be a little ways for him. All along, Joe Thuney looked like he was the closest. Jalen Watson's probably next. We'll see, but it could still be a little bit for him too. The non-football injury list, Justin Reed and B.J. Thompson. Obviously, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more time for both of those guys. The injuries and issues that popped up on Sunday, Nick, Chris Jones with the groin strain. And I mean, I can say from, observation and everything, it certainly did not look like Chris Jones or Andy Reid was that concerned about it. Reid did go out of kind of his way to make sure that even though Chris was joking around about maybe wanting a little rest and a little time off during camp, Andy tried to at least underscore that, no, this wasn't fake. He said, even though Chris was joking around and all, he actually has a sore groin. But it doesn't look like it's too serious to me. I don't know what your thoughts were about after hearing what Andy Reid had to say.
I'm not worried about it. Again, it's another one of those guys that's had plenty of reps. You need to find out what you got in Neil Farrell. You need to let Kershawn Wharton get those reps as well, because he didn't have the year he probably wanted coming off the ACL stuff last year. So he needs to get back into a certain level rep wise while he's getting the opportunity. And the kicker of it is, like you've talked about on here many times before, you're trying to win the war, not the battle. So it's a long football season for these guys, especially when they get to the playoffs. So you don't need them having lingering injuries or things that hamper them throughout the season, because in all honesty, I know it sounds weird to say, but it's not every game has the same do or die mentality. The Chiefs just need to win the AFC West and get in the tournament. They've proven a multitude of ways they can win at home, they can win on the road, they can win at different seeds. They have the veteran experience to guide them through those type of things, as long as certain people stay healthy. So for them, it's like what the Patriots used to be, to where they're building up throughout the season to where they don't want to be playing their best football till December and, in all honesty, January. So they've got this thing down. There's enough guys around, and on top of it, think about this. I mean, most of the guys on this team have been to 2 Super Bowls. Not everybody, but they've at least experienced 2 of the 4 Super Bowls the Chiefs have been in during this time. Some guys have experienced all 4 of the Super Bowls they've been in. So they understand, they've been in those moments, and they know what it takes throughout the season to get to that point and how to ramp themselves up and amp themselves up. And they understand the winding journey year after year. So, I mean, that's an even more crucial thing. When you talk about the Chiefs draft picks from that 2022 class, all those guys know nothing but AFC Championship wins and Super Bowls. They don't know anything else. They don't know that the NFL, that there are teams that in fact only win 3 or 4 games a year and don't get to the playoffs and don't get to an AFC Championship and a Super Bowl. Those guys don't know anything else. And the fact that they're going into year 3 and you're hoping that everything goes right this year, and they go into year 4 without having to know, that experience, not having that experience either. I'm just saying, there's a lot of guys that have been down this road that can really help this Chiefs team, to where these guys that have these injuries, you're hey, we don't need this lingering. Let's get you to 100%. We don't need you at 70 or 80%. We need you at 100.
Yeah, and if Chris doesn't work on Monday, which I would expect, off day on Tuesday, you've got a chance to just have 3 days off for Chris to have that sore groin improve. That could be enough that maybe on Wednesday he's back to work. Let's see what happens. Could be the same situation with Justin Watson too. He injured his foot on Wednesday, had an off day on Thursday, have another off day on Tuesday. I would expect he's not going to be in there on Monday. It's going to be 6 days off. I was told that with the foot injury, it was a minor issue. He should be out for a few days. We'll see if Wednesday he's back in action. He's looked pretty comfortable on the sidelines. There's no boot, or doesn't look like there's even an extended wrap on that thing, Nick. So, but certainly the Chiefs are being, cautious, and also cautious with Najee Johnson. He's left practice now twice in the last few days. With that right knee, and as Andy Reid, the team yesterday used the word hamstring, and even today Reid said it was more of the hamstring than the knee. I'm not going to play Dr. Holiday Inn doctor here, Nick, but there's 2 different ways to do an ACL reconstruction, and one of them is to take a graft from the hamstring tendon. I don't know that that's what Najee Johnson had, but if he did, and he's got some tightness in that hamstring, they're going to be cautious with it because that would have been touched during the ACL too. So who knows? But Reed said that they don't seem to have a concern with it because the rest of the knee is fine. It doesn't seem to have an issue, and it being the hamstring more than the knee itself, that's a good sign. So don't think that I don't get the impression there's any of those things to worry about. Chiefs were also without Hollywood and Clyde Edwards-Helaire on Sunday, both those guys with an illness. That should not be anything major long term. So I don't know if there's anything that's popped up with the injuries over the weekend or illnesses, Nick, that it's a long laundry list of players that they're affected, but doesn't seem to be anything that I think is orange alert level. It's nothing that's super serious at this point.
No, and I mean the thing about it is for a lot of these guys, like that's what happens after you've been in pads for a couple days. Like a lot of these injuries, like there's a lot of guys that aren't on the injury report that have sore muscles that have, because that when we talk about getting in football condition, getting in hitting condition, this is what that is. This is the part where their bodies get used to hitting all over again and having those collisions and colliding all the time. You can't replicate that in training for the most part because your body's going to get bruised. If you're a running back, you're used to guys going at your thigh pads and trying to cut you off there or try to tackle you in various ways. So, and for offensive linemen, defensive linemen, taking those jolts from one another, like that's what part of hitting condition and football condition is. So, I mean, your body it's like, you're forming a callus just like you would for most people in general, to where you're just amping up to that certain point and you're trying to get as much contact as you can, especially before that first preseason game, and get all those reps, and then throughout the entire preseason before you get to that opening game, so that your body not only can be in condition, but it doesn't. Imagine it like somebody being 100%. Then throughout a game, you wear down because of fatigue, you wear down because of the amount of hits, because of the amount of snaps and everything. So like what the Chiefs are doing right now, and what the humidity and heat is actually helping them with right now, is to put them against the max extremes that they're going to face early on in the season, while they still ramp up to the October period where most of the league is going to be on the same page at that point.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, either on the podcast or on the live stream, about that. The Chiefs are one of the teams that probably uses the sensors and the analytics and the metrics as much or more than any other team when it comes to managing workloads and making sure that guys don't get too much work, that if their performance is slipping, hey, they're slower than they were the day before, they're below their normal thresholds, that they're backing off those guys and, protecting them a little bit. So, and I asked Andy Reid about that the other day, and he said, yeah, I mean, they're absolutely doing that early in camp because, those metrics and those analytics and the sensors that they use are a good way to help them prevent injuries. And it helps them, avoiding some of the soft tissue injuries that, during early part of camp, especially when you first go to pads, can be fairly prevalent. So, when you're going for a three-peat, Nick, there's no reason to push the gas when you don't have to. And this team isn't going to do that. They're not going to risk anything with this squad going without making sure that they've got their I's dotted and their T's crossed when it comes to injuries of their starters. Getting into the action on the field, Nick, since it was finally Friday, Nick.
Yeah,
we finally got to see.
And we're past Friday too.
We're past Fat Friday, so now we've got 3 practices in the books. Let's just get straight to the meat and potatoes. We're going to skip the vegetables and get straight to the fun stuff, what everybody wants to know. Let's talk about the big question marks, because whenever you've been saying, wait until the pads come on, we do it on guys we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So the big one, obviously, Nick, is left tackle. Kingsley Suamadi. We've seen Wanye Morris, but Kingsley's brand new, and we need to see what Wanye learned from last year. What's your kind of first impressions from the pads with both those guys?
Yeah, from watching Kingsley, he had 2 really good reps against Chris Jones yesterday in one-on-one. And I know from a drill perspective, you don't want to take a ton out of that. But when you're going against somebody as elite as Chris Jones off the edge that knows how to hand fight and has lightning quick hands, for Kingsley to hold his own, for him not to overextend himself, for him not to lunge, for him to be able to kind of keep the seat the way that he does, like my coach used to call it, to where you want to imagine like when you're kick stepping, you're trying to not completely turn yourself in an unfavorable position to where they can shoot your inside shoulder. or they can cut around you on the outside. You're waiting for them to come to you, and you're trying to keep them at an arm's length when you can, and you're trying to keep a square level to where you stay even keel. Like imagine you're just sitting on a moving tractor with a seat, and you have to continue to step that way to stay on that seat so you don't fall off. And I don't know if that made sense, but it did in my head and when my coach told me a long time ago. But you're keeping your pad level a certain length and everything. You're keeping a certain way about it with each step you're taking. You're keeping that balance overall, because it's like think of it like somebody being on ice. The reason penguins don't slip like we do is because they don't overextend their center of gravity. So like they're not too top heavy and put too far of a step to where they can slip backwards, or they're too, where you're leaning too much forward to where you slip forward. And you just keep even steps to keep yourself even across the board. That's the key for Kingsley, is to not lunge. And to do that early on the first day, he lunged a couple times, and Mike Dana taught him, can't do that. So he learned the lesson from there. And then he got to, I believe he went against George Karlaftis too a couple times, and he really got to see what lightning quick counter rushes can be, to where they set you up outside, then shoot on your inside shoulder, which is what he had problems with in college. And from day one to day two, the steps that he took and how he continued to focus on the fundamentals and show quicker feet than what he did on his college tape, I'm encouraged with what I saw. And if I'm picking somebody to lead right now, Kingsley has learned a lot from the coaches, and for him, it's a matter of continually practicing those reps. So the more times in all honesty, the more times they force him against George Karlaftis and Chris Jones, even if he gets beat, that's what's going to make him better. He needs to be going against those speed rushers. Then he needs the Mike Danas of the world to teach him the power rushers he's going against. But if I'm the Chiefs D-line coach Joe Cullen or O-line coach Andy Heck, I want Kingsley going against those three guys only. I need those three guys to be the guys that he goes against, because he's protecting the blind side of the most important player on the team, and he needs to see this on a day-in, day-out basis, so he gets enough snaps and he gets enough reps to go against that. So by the time he gets to the Baltimore Ravens in week 1, he is good to go. And I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. He's going to make rookie mistakes. He's going to have some of those issues, but he held his own in run blocking. Whenever I got to watch that, he, in his cutoff and how quickly he can get second level, it shows. And he's got good balance to him. So overall, I really like where he's at. He's from a technique perspective, he's better than what he showed on his college tape already. So I'm encouraged by that. Now, Wanye Morris, on the other hand, I saw a lot of the same bad habits I saw last year from a pass protection perspective. And the key things for him last year was, can he get stronger? Will he stop lunging in pass pro? He lunged, and guys got by him that are quality rushers, and he lunged again. And I'm like, you got to stop lunging, man. Like, that was your thing last year. And then I saw those in some of the one-on-one reps, and I wasn't thrilled to see that happen multiple times. I'm not saying it happened every time, but it wasn't ideal to see, because some tackles, they get nervous they feel like they got to close down the edge and make contact as quickly as possible. You don't have to do that all the time. Some of the great tackles let the defensive ends wear themselves out and wear the angle out, and then just ride them out of the pocket so the quarterback can step up if they want, or they can do whatever. But they have if you've seen it in the NFL Combine, the mirroring technique to be able to react immediately to them and be able to adjust to them. So Wanye's, the more Wanye continues down this road, the more I wonder if they're going to have to put him at guard some point, for me personally. And so I think they're going to have to keep that option open down the road if he doesn't make the progressions he needs to make this preseason. But that's just me personally. So, I mean, we'll see. But right now, I think looking, and I know this is only based on 2 to 3 days of what I was able to see, and we'll see what happens when they put the pads back on next week and when they get to the preseason game, and we'll see if those jumps change, if they got a little better, if they got a little took the necessary steps that needed to where each one of them grew. So I'm not saying the competition's over, but I am saying that Kingsley is doing the little things right that needs to be done to be the blindside left tackle. And Wanye still has a ways to go to where I haven't seen those jumps that I was wanting to see from him.
And, and playing devil's advocate here, there could be even a positive at looking at this because, hey, George Karlaftis was a double-digit sack guy last year. It could be that George Karlaftis is just a lot better than he was last year. So maybe, absolutely, dominating Kingsley in those two reps might not be as insulting to Kingsley as it may sound because George Karlaftis might be just ready for a breakout season. I mean, we're going to find out for sure, but you're right. I mean, things look, hey, it can be nerves. There can be a lot of things that happen to rookies, especially in a small sample size when the pads first come on. And a good point, which is that, when was the last time a rookie, to you, Nick, really flashed from the very beginning as a rookie? I mean, for me, I got to go back to Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. This is the last time that I remember seeing a rookie in training camp and being like, okay, this one's the real deal. I mean, there's just from day one. I mean, usually there is a adjustment period. I mean, there's you have to pick up the speed. You have to learn all of that. And remember, even though we're talking about Patrick Mahomes dominating from day one, yet we're all talking about the interceptions, although that doesn't matter. But I mean, there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time to grow and mature. And the fact that he looked like he was improving from day to day throughout the weekend for the first 3 days that the pad's on, it's a good sign. And to your point, Wanye, when you look at the results, I think that kind of showed on the field. I mean, you just look at the outcomes that they were getting when they were in team periods and 11-on-11s and just looking at where the pressure was coming from and what was able to happen. I don't think there was any doubt. I mean, I think you're right that Kingsley was getting the better looks. Was it, as Andy Reid likes to say, was everything pretty? Probably not. But sometimes as a rookie, your job is to get the job done. It doesn't matter how pretty it looks. And so far, I think you do have to give the edge to Kingsley. Another big name, Nick, that everybody wants to know about in first looks is, I hear him just sometimes called Rugby. LRZ, Louis Rees-Zammit. First opportunity to see him in pads, in pass protection, doing some things. What were your first impressions of Louis?
So I'm going to say the three things that I had questions on whenever he was going to start talking, or not talking, he was going to start playing on the field, is how well does he protect the ball? Does he get his pad level down so he doesn't get laid out? And what is he like in pass protection? So from what I saw over from a pad perspective on those 2 days when I was there, right now that game's moving really, really fast for him. I mean, really fast for him, to where there was a couple of times he either didn't see it or he wasn't sure, and it closed down quick. And so him being able to read it right now, that's a struggle for him. And I think that that's going to take a lot more time than people realize, because in rugby, I don't know if you have to make the decision that quickly on some of those interior runs and some of those what would be interior runs for us and off tackle runs. Because from what I remember, a lot of his highlights were his ability to bounce it outside, which would be the equivalent in football of a toss, reverse, or pitch, and kind of just getting to the edge and then outrunning, the guys in rugby's angles to the end zone. But so right now I see a guy that still has too high a pad level. See a guy from a vision perspective that has barely been able to play it. So I'm not knocking on this and saying he's got to be up to speed. He didn't play it in high school. He didn't play it in college. So for him to be doing this at an NFL level, it's for people that are video gamers. It's like him playing Madden for the first 6-7 games. It would be the equivalent of practices here on the hardest level possible. It's just, that's what he's going against. And he's going against elite athletes. He's an elite athlete from a rugby perspective and a speed perspective, but there's a lot more you need skill set wise and you need rep wise to be able to make that happen. So he's not there yet on that front. And then I haven't really seen him lower the shoulder into people yet, and it's, be able to kind of have some authority in that regard. and then also kind of be able to lower the shoulder and then what they call rise up into a defender and run them over and deliver messages. He's not there at that point yet. And I don't expect him to be. And then on top of that, from a pass protection perspective, like he got ran over by Curtis Jacobs on a couple of those reps that I was able to watch today that Aaron Ladd shot. And then I know that he held his own another time. And I can't remember who the linebacker was. I think it might have been Cole Christensen. It was Cole Christensen 48. And he held his own a couple times. He did better in those reps, so I'm not saying that he was just awful, but I expected him to struggle with that. He didn't get laid out as quickly as I thought he was going to, be simply because like that's the first time he's had a guy probably running at him at full speed with full momentum, and he's going to have a particular set, and he's going to have particular hand placement to be able to stop that momentum and stop that rush and kind of essentially be on the defensive like he would have to be as a player. So I didn't expect that to be perfect. And like it wasn't. And again, all this that I'm talking about, all these things, I've heard so many people think that he's just locked into this roster because of that. Here's the reality. The fact that Chiefs put Kadarius Toney as a potential running back, maybe wide receiver, maybe kick returner, punt returner, I actually think that who Reese is now competing with for a roster spot is Kadarius Toney, because Kadarius can play multiple positions for him if he can stay healthy. Reese has ways to go, and I'm just telling you right now with where Reese is at from what I saw, and I'm not saying he can't get better during preseason, so I want to make that clear. Doesn't mean he can't get better, doesn't mean that he's not going to be a much better player by the end of this, because he picks things up pretty quickly from the softball game we saw, and so I'm not counting him out. But I do think the battle I'm watching that nobody's talking about right now is Kadarius Toney versus Reese Zammit. I'm not kidding you. I think that's actually the battle for a roster spot is, can Reese do enough to justify where the Chiefs maybe keep him over Kadarius Toney, or does Kadarius Toney have so much more experience and ability and is actually able to stay healthy to where he gives them more of what they actually need for maybe even some of the plays they were thinking about designing for Reese?
Well, it goes back to what we kind of talked about as far as roster construction with Reese, is that you can't count him as a running back. So if you're the Chiefs and you're planning on keeping 3 running backs, Reese Zammit isn't one of those 3. I mean, he would be a 4th guy, so he would be an extra. So now, if you're keeping 4 running backs, well, you can't do that and keep 4 tight ends and 6 or 7 receivers. The numbers don't add up. So you have something's got to give. And yeah, for the work usage that he got during OTAs, and it was a ton. I mean, they overloaded him during OTAs, and he handled that part. Now, you kind of see at least where he falls in the depth chart. He's lower at that spot. He's not getting as many reps. But once again, I mean, that goes back to the Chiefs. If he has a role this year, it's going to be on special teams and just a limited offensive piece. And I think you're right. I mean, I might even bring in Irv Smith into that conversation, as far as, who you're competing against. You're competing against the last guys, maybe at some of the other positions on offense, about who's going to be on this team. And there are some moments. I mean, and the one thing that's probably going to be really tricky about it for him, Nick, that I keep thinking about from a running perspective in the backfield, is that he hasn't run hasn't had to do anything like a sophisticated zone blocking scheme and choosing where you run. I mean, his best run plays, as you mentioned, are really, it's a toss left, and it's just run as fast as you can and get out there and let some guys hit some man blocks on you. I mean, anything outside zone is a little bit more too complicated for him. Not that he can't get it, but it's all brand new, and it's hard to get for anybody, much less somebody who's never played before. So yeah, I think my thought process as far as his likelihood to make the roster, it's lower than it was at the end of OTAs. It's not 0 though, so there's still a chance for him to bounce back. But he struggled as we expected. But I think once again there was some progress there, and some of it's just technique things that he needs to clean up, and he needs for the game to slow down, because there's no doubt it's going too fast for him right now. Let's get to, some of the other things that we saw that, over the last couple of days, Nick, and let's talk about, what impressed you. Who's the guy or the guys that stood out to you over this weekend, or the first weekend in pads?
Yeah. First one I'm going to mention is obviously going to be Derrick Prince, running back. Derrick is he's with each passing day that he kind of locks in what he's doing, how smoothly he's catching out of the backfield, how explosive he's starting to get from the backfield and in the flats, and with the run that he's getting, and where his pass protection's at versus last year. He had phenomenal pass protection reps on Sunday, just the way he locked people down and really slowed them down to where I think Eric Bieniemy would have been proud of it. I think Jerick McKinnon would have been excited about it. I think Charkandrick West and even Jamal Charles would have been excited about it, because I remember where he was last year and where he's at now. Whole different guy. And that's good to see. That is welcome to see, to where he's got the size now and he's got better contact balance than he had last year, which was the thing that it was one of the three things that I was kind of wanting to put on the checklist if he was able to do those. He can hit a defender and stay up now. That's not a problem for him. So to be able to kind of see some of that was very, very encouraging. If I remember correctly, I think one of them was on the touch. I want to say it was one of the touchdowns they were working in red zone. It may have been goal line, technically inside the 10 or 15. And he caught it, and he already thought about how to lower that. And I believe it was him versus Brian Cook on that play, if I'm remembering correctly. And he did the necessary steps that you wanted to see from him. So that's my first one. And Matt, we just go back and forth. Who's your first one that kind of has impressed you so far?
Yeah, I'll stay at the running back spot because and Derrick Prince has absolutely impressed me, and he's obviously impressed the coaches, because right now, he's coming in after Isaiah Pacheco. That's where he is on the depth chart. That tells you a lot. I've been impressed with Keontae Ingram because, Prince has backed up a lot of what he did last year. It's just that he really needs to be able to prove that he can extend it. He's not going to hit that rookie wall, and that he can, because last year he had a great training camp, and then all of a sudden it just kind of dropped off. He's getting a lot of work this year, a lot of play. We need to see if he's got that stamina, if he's kind of built it up a little bit. Keontae Ingram he's a journeyman, and he's been around for a little bit, but he's really impressed me. He's been actually moving up the depth chart a little bit. He's right behind now Clyde as far as that goes. Impressed me in pass protection on Sunday. Had some really good reps. He's been, good catching the football out of the backfield. I don't know if with the way that Prince is going right now, and and the Chiefs have the investment in Clyde, whether he can push either one of those two for a spot. But he was on the practice squad last year. I would be very comfortable with him on the practice squad again this year, and being somebody you could go to if you have some injuries. But he's impressed me.
Yeah. So next one for me is going to I'll go back to this one later. But the next one I'm going to put is Irv Smith, the tight end. Irv is really forcing his way as the fourth tight end on the roster. The way he's catching passes, the way he can kind of work out of the fullback spot at times if he needs to, what he's doing on play action, the connection, his understanding of the offense, his explosiveness that he has overall, as long as he can stay healthy through training camp and preseason, I think the Chiefs keep four tight ends, and I think Irv is a bigger part of it than people realize, because he's got everything that gives them an advantage if they can match him up in a either 3 or 4 tight end set if they want to. And I know it sounds weird to say, but the Chiefs had some 4 tight end sets that they had set up a couple years ago. They just never truly got to use them in the way that they wanted. So if they can use some of those packages, especially down in the goal line, because see, the problem the Chiefs had inside the 20 a lot of these years is they didn't have a package that they could go to essentially force teams to run, for them to be able to run some power football and for them to kind of out-athlete or outsize some people. And they now have 4 tight ends on this roster that can do that, both from an athletic perspective. They have a good combination of athletic ability. They have a good combination of size, and they just have enough to where they can mismatch the safeties and linebackers in a way. And even technically the corners, if you got some corners that, hey, you got to take Kelsey, you got to take Jared Wiley, and the other 2 have to take Noah Gray and Irv Smith. Good luck to you. So, I mean, the Chiefs have that package available to them if they keep all 4 of them. And if I'm in their shoes, I do it. You got 3 tight end sets, you have 4 tight end sets, and those 4 guys are all more than capable of being able to make a difference for this team, especially inside the 10, 15, 20-yard line, to help them punch in some of those touchdowns that they either had to settle for field goals last year or, whatever it may be, to really kind of help them close out games a lot quicker and be able to kind of get some of those short yardage situations in a way that they couldn't last year.
Yeah, for everything we've been talking about, and I'll maybe put an asterisk next to it because both these guys should probably be on my list. I had Irv Smith down on my list too, Nick, because he has just been, to me, I mean, he might have been the best tight end, performance-wise over the last 3 days in camp. I mean, he just was that good. Jared Wiley has also been good. But Jared Wiley, while he is the Travis Kelce comp, I mean, Irv Smith is the Noah Gray comp. I mean, those they complement each other well. I mean, they do things that the other one can do. I mean, it's, it gives you a lot of depth at that spot. If something were to happen to Noah Gray, Irv Smith can handle all of that. And he has the trust of a quarterback because Carson Wentz has been around the block a few times. Carson Wentz has already figured out his safety blanket on the number 2 offense is Irv Smith.
Yep.
I mean, he knows that's the guy that he can go to anytime that things look fishy and there's some shenanigans going on. He had a sequence on Saturday, 5-play sequence. Carson Wentz throws the ball in the red zone 3 times to Irv Smith, 2 of them for touchdowns and 3 completions in that 5-play sequence. I mean, and 3 targets. I mean, that says a lot just about how good he is, but also that he, Wentz is, trust him. So who's next on your list?
Jaden Hicks. Like, I mean, I already thought he's going to be promising anyways, but like just the way he's been out there. And for people that don't know, he had an interception on Patrick Mahomes and 7-on-7 yesterday. Mahomes threw a no look, and like Mahomes wouldn't throw that in a game the way that he did. But he knows it's 7-on-7. He knows it's practice. So he knows he can get away with it and just try it and see if it works out. And then Jaden Hicks spotted it to a T, didn't take the cheese, and he's like, there you go. And then he jumped on it and intercepted it. And Mahomes, you can tell, was a little surprised by his mannerisms. He's like, oh. and then Jaden got it. And like Jaden wasn't playing around on that front. And so, and there was one against Keontae Ingram yesterday when they were doing team run. And Ingram looked like he's like, okay. I'm like, Ingram's going to get a first down on this with the momentums he's got. And he was only 2 yards into the run, which looked like if Hicks doesn't get him, he's going to bounce off and pick up that first down and get the additional 8 to 12 with where everybody was at and everything. And Jaden stopped him in his tracks, just stopped him in his tracks with a big hit right there. And, people are probably thinking like a Madden stick type hit that Ronnie Lott would have been proud of. I'm just telling you, he had a good form tackle and he stopped every ounce of momentum that Ingram had. And that's not a knock on Ingram. I'm just telling you, when you see Jaden Hicks in person, and some people have commented when I post videos of him walking down the hill, they're like, wow, he's a big safety. And like, that's what everybody says. And that's what you and I had said during OTAs and kind of prepared people for. And like, I'm just telling you, like, he does not look lost out there. He does not look overwhelmed out there. And he is quite the presence out there.
Yeah, I'm not going to duplicate you here because even though I completely agree, he was on my list. And I'll just point out how many times have I seen a defensive back, though, especially a young guy, when Patrick Mahomes throws a no-look pass that they get their hands on and they drop it. He didn't drop it, so he's not doing that. I'm going to add another wide receiver to the mix, and it's a guy that is going to be on the outside looking in, Nick, and he's got a lot of traffic to try and weave through to make this team. But there's one receiver on this team who caught a deep ball all 3 days of these padded practices, and it's not who you think. It was Montrell Washington. Montrell Washington. It's probably the 3rd best ball tracker of that wide receiver group behind Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. And once again, Carson Wentz has figured that out. He Wentz and Washington have really been teaming up. And today, Washington even made a big catch and ran through a tackle to get into the end zone. He's, once again, another journeyman that has been around for a while, mostly a special teams contributor. Obviously, he's returned punts for the Chiefs in the last couple of years. But there's more to his game. I mean, he absolutely can. So is this another, hey, he's been on the practice squad. Is this another guy that you keep around that if you need some depth, you get some injuries that he can help out? yeah, I think this guy can make some plays because he's been doing it the last 3 days. Not saying that right now he's one of the 6 or 7 best receivers on this team. Is he maybe the 8th best and maybe the 3rd best at a couple of things? Yeah. And could he figure his way into special teams and be a kick or punt returner? Yeah, he absolutely could. So that's my guy. You have more on your list of good surprises, Nick?
I probably have 1 or 2 more, but I will say, and I agree with you 100% on Washington. Like the skinny post yesterday that Carson Wentz loaded up on the play action and tossed up there for him, and the position he took and how he adjusted and got there to be able to make that diving catch that I retweeted from the Chiefs because I think that was during team portion. Yeah, it was, because I would have shot that if that was guess. And I wasn't at that time. So yeah, no, that showed a ton of growth in the offense from where he probably was last year. So yeah, I feel like at worst case, he's got himself an opportunity on the Chiefs practice squad, like you're talking about there. Best case, he puts a lot of tape together to where maybe he is another team's 4th, 5th, 6th receiver potentially. Like, I mean, he does at least have that possibility. I mean, I hope the Chiefs are able to keep him and continue to develop him. But no, I agree with you on all those points. I'm going to say it, and I know it's going to be obvious for some and everything, but Felix Uzama, like pass rushing perspective, you see what Tamba worked with him on, and he is a much better hand fighter, much quicker at that. He's more conscientious about setting the edge. And I saw him doing that multiple times against Juan Morrison run yesterday and even the day before. He's more mindful about that. And I'm just telling you, like the moves, the hand movement he had against some of the tackles, whether it was one-on-one or elsewhere, maybe in team sometimes, like it's just a whole different level for him from where he was last year. And that's great to see. And so Chris is the fastest when it comes to hand fighting. Chris can, in blink of an eye, he's made 2 to 3 moves already. Felix isn't far off with where he's at now. And it's not a coincidence. George Karlaftis, I would say if I'm looking at the 3 fastest in hand fighting moves right now, it's Chris Jones, who's on his own island, George Karlaftis, who's behind Chris and is inching closer, and Felix behind him. Now, why is that such a big deal? The quicker you can negate an offensive tackle's hand movement and their ability to be able to grip on you and be able to set them up wide and rip inside, or to be able to set them up inside and then go wide on them and have what you essentially call a pass rush plan on them, Felix is getting that. You see the work with Tamba truly paying off there, to where if Felix needs to do the wax on, wax off thing, he can do that without a problem. And he can do it quickly, to where from some of the hand fighting I saw, I was like, oh, there you go. So that's what I expected to see from him, having worked with Tamba and watching what Tamba did all over those years. Whenever I'd see Tamba on the sidelines working on that before a game and just in an absolute drenched sweat while he continues to work on that on the sidelines ahead of a game, like he's passed it on to Karlaftis, he's passed that on to Felix, and I'm just telling you, we'll see, what it's like in preseason for Felix, but I'm telling you, from a hand fighting perspective, he's a heck of a lot quicker, and he's got a little bit better burst off the edge from some of those wide looks that he was taking to get upfield.
And to underscore that point even more, Nick, remember last year at training camp, he was basically still playing with one hand. Because of the wrist surgery, he wasn't medically cleared to return until really early July. So he had almost no off-season work. He certainly didn't have any of the OTA practices, none of that under his belt. So he came into training camp essentially without any football work, during the off-season, because he would prepare for the combine, coming back from the wrist surgery, didn't really do anything else. And so even early in the season, he was still kind of playing one-handed. And when he was filling in for Charles Omenihu and getting in there. So, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. You're seeing a completely different player this year. And let's also realize and remember, he's still the youngest defensive lineman on the team. And I think the 7th youngest player overall. So even though he was a pick last year, he's younger than half the draft class this year, Nick. So that's just still tells you a lot. He's got a lot more room to mature and to grow. Any last parting thoughts for you, Nick?
I would say I love the burst that Bailey's got. I'm gonna say that part of that. I think Bailey from TCU. I really like the burst that he's got. I'm hoping to kind of see him move up the chart a little bit here over the next handful of weeks, or be able to kind of showcase himself snap wise, because like once he hits a hole, he's got some burst. He gets some burst out of that backfield, and he doesn't play around. Clyde looks a little bit quicker this year, and we'll see as the season goes on how he's able to do. But Clyde's got a little bit of burst to him that I wasn't expecting. And then something else I was gonna I do want to recognize Justin Ross, obviously. And I mean, look, when he's with Winston, I mean, he's made some of those red zone plays that people have been craving about him. And like, he had that fantastic catch the other day to where there was good coverage there, but he just outleaped, and there was no chance that the corner was going to be able to stop him. He just outleaped him, and then, high pointed it, and then got the knee inbounds and on that touchdown from Wentz. And I think him and Wentz have a good connection. But I mean, here's the thing I'm going to say: at the end of the day, he needs to have that connection with Mahomes, because that's how you're gonna get on the field and be able to have that part of being on the 6 or 7 man wide receivers. And then finally, something I know you and I were chatting about beforehand, the defense. If you kind of think what's been going on with the defense, George Karlaftis had that hit on Kadarius Toney, then Nick Bolton had the hit on Justin Ross. And it was the day before Pats came on. Then Drew Tranquill was playing like a man on fire from some of the stuff I was seeing from video-wise when I came back here. I kind of wonder if they're trying to challenge people to be a tempo setter each day on that defense and really kind of light a fire for them and really kind of be that difference maker. And I just kind of wonder if that torch, to use an Olympic term, is being passed around on that defense, to where each guy is trying to either not only have their day, but be that person that helps challenge each other to be that person that helps start that fire that can raise the level of this defense. And when you and I had heard Steve Spagnuolo earlier this year talked about how, the Giants had their good defense and then they dropped like a rock. I wonder if that's part of the challenge that's going on behind the scenes, to see some of these guys out of character kind of, raise that level. I do kind of wonder, I'm like, is this the personal challenge that some of these guys are taking, to be like, hey, I want to be the fire starter on this defense today. And I want to be that person that really kind of pushes us to a new level in practice. And I wonder if each person's kind of taking that torch and that challenge to be that individual.
Yeah, I had the same concern that Steve Spagnuolo did, Nick, which was that especially when you bring back an entire defense, essentially, except for L'Jarius, and you don't have a lot of turnover like it looks like this defense is going to have, can you stay hungry? What can you be if you don't have, maybe as many young guys pushing you to be better? Can you back up what you did a year ago when you were the number 2 defense, when now you're essentially just a year older and you just won a Super Bowl, maybe you don't have that fire. This defense has been playing with fire all training camp. So I no longer have that concern. I mean, I think Steve Spagnuolo's got them mindset-wise exactly where they want them. We'll see where it goes. I should have mentioned this in our rundown of, our guys who have really impressed us, but I do want to tip my hat to Nico Remigio. I said during the end of this that he's going to just have to continue to take advantage of his opportunities and make plays. And he's done that. He's definitely got an uphill battle. It's just to where he is on the depth chart and how many receivers that the Chiefs have. But I did get a chance to talk to him, Nick, on Saturday. I've got a piece that's going to be coming out on Monday on Chiefs Digest, and you can learn a little bit more. But I get it. I get it why Matt Nagy and Andy Reid and Dave Tobe all say that they're rooting for this guy. He's a Cal kid. He's very smart. Just an incredible story. He's got a passion, and it's pretty clear. I mean, he's a very positive guy, and some great stories. So hopefully you can go check that out. Nick and I will be back on Tuesday night for the Chiefs Digest live stream at 7:00 Tuesday. Next Sunday, we'll be back in your stream with 41 is the mic. If anything else happens big, I'm going to be trying to do a few more videos this week from St. Joe. So we'll see. Maybe Nick can wrap me on the hands if I don't shoot a video every day. So you'll find more on the YouTube stream. But Nick's shaking his head at me, but
I'm not going to be hey man, that's I'm not going to be the guy that's going to make it awkward in the press room. Okay. Or the media workroom. I'm not going to be that guy that's like, Matt, did you do your video today?
somebody needs to make sure I do my homework. That's right.
No, I'm not going to do that to you. But yeah, well, I'll say about Ramijo, like the biggest thing with him is he's able to do it with all three. He can catch with all four quarterbacks. Like, you and I saw during OTAs, and we've seen it during training camp too. Like, he's able to create chemistry with all of them, and that's a sneaky good trait to have, to where each quarterback could feel comfortable with you. So if any quarterback gets put in a position like that, they can have trust in that player, and like Nico maybe can be that safety blanket from time to time that gets them in a rhythm if they end up having to play in a game, whether it's preseason or regular season. Like, that's going to be something to watch on that front. And then the thing I did want to bring up, Matt, I want to get your thoughts on the puppet that the Raiders decided to do. Your thoughts on that before we get out of here, because I know we're going to get asked in the Q&A about it if we don't.
I love the response from both Mahomes and from Andy Reid.
Yeah.
So Mahomes just saying it'll get handled when it gets handled, I mean, was the most, non-violent, threatening thing I've ever seen a football player say. I mean, yeah. I just felt like that was a Vito Corleone kind of thing, Nick, that it was just like, okay, this is where in the Godfather movie somebody's about to get whacked. And we know who's going to be doing the whacking. But Andy Reid just saying, we don't have a lot of time for puppets here. That was amazing. So it could come back to bite you, because it was a fan. There might be somebody who brings something into a Chiefs training camp practice that turns into a viral moment. We'll see. But Andy Reid just is a national treasure, Nick.
Yeah, no, it was funny whenever he said the most coach thing.
A lot of time for puppets.
We don't really deal with puppets. We don't really deal with puppets around here too much. Like it's a team drill that they have every single day in training camp practice. I was like, oh, Andy, that's perfect, man. That'd be something I would love to say if I was in your position too. Tip of the cap, sir. And then Antonio Pierce's response, I kind of found funny, because like he said afterwards, he's like, yeah, we addressed it and we nipped it in the bud. And then later, when somebody asked him kind of about that and some of the other stuff about some of the Raiders players on Twitter kind of chirping the way that they have, and he's basically hinting there's a certain line you don't want to cross, and like we got to remind them of that. And I'm thinking in my head, I was like, okay, but you set the tempo when you went on your player Max Crosby's show, and you started talking about Mahomes in the way that you did and the Chiefs the way that you did. So your players followed your suit. So you, as the leader of the team, showed who you are as a rookie head coach by doing that and letting them know that apparently that was acceptable to go to that level. And so now that you're kind of getting on a rookie and saying, hey, that was just probably a line that you shouldn't have crossed, you set the tempo already. So now you're finally realizing maybe the error in your ways as a rookie head coach. So the question then becomes down the road here, what other error in your ways am I going to find out down the road here as the season goes on? So I'm just saying, like, that. I know the thing about the rookie, about the puppet and the rookie being the one that did that and everything. But I'm telling you, I think there's a little bit more there in terms of like that bears watching from that situation.
You're right there. And I feel for the kid, because I mean, if he's on the team, man, if he's playing against the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes would be looking at him very first snap, and absolutely just saying, hey, who what, Trey Taylor, this kid's name?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is going to be going to whoever receiver and say, hey, I mean, if you're on this guy, you're just running a 9 route. I'm throwing the ball to you. We're going to toast this kid.
Or they get Pacheco on a screen pass to run him over.
Well, that's the other way. Is just you just run a counter his direction and have Trey Smith put him in the ground. Yeah, that's.
So there's a lot of
options.
A lot of room to explore when you get to October at that point. But yeah, no, I mean, look, camp's been fun up there. It's been encouraging to see. I love seeing the shoulder pads on, and if I remember correctly from the CBA, they can't be back in pads until probably Thursday at the earliest, right? Because if you do 3 days in a row, I think it's 3 days you have to be off without pads at that point. I looked it up this morning. I tried to.
Probably correct. I could not remember, but yeah, I do know that after 3 days is the max, and then
you have to give 3 consecutive. Yeah, you got to give 3 consecutive days off. So I think the earliest is either Thursday or Friday that they'd be able to do it again, because they're going to be off on Tuesday and then they're going to be off on Saturday.
Yeah, and they're not going to be in pads on Monday. They'll be off on Tuesday, so probably another shells and spiders on Wednesday, and then
ramp back up from
ramp back up.
And then so I think Thursday, Friday is it, and then and since it wouldn't be, because like the thing that kind of confused me in looking at the CBA is I'm like, okay, so say you only do 2 days in a row, like okay, so then on Sunday could you wear pads again? Because the more times you can wear pads right now to get them up to speed before that preseason game, I would think that's kind of where you want to use most of that at.
Yeah, man. Reed obviously structures as best he can to try and get as many padded practices in and get them off before off days and all of that. So it's not his first rodeo. He's figured out how to do it, and there's no doubt about that. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us. We will be back with you, like I said, in live stream on Tuesday night. 41 is the mic. Back in your podcast stream next Sunday, as always. Have a great week, everybody.
Till next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.